When we think about what makes a good film, whether it be live action or animation, it's usually the narrative, the visuals, the music, sometimes something less tangible like abstraction. And people and filmmakers aim to immerse audiences in stories by blending all of these elements together. But for Norman McLaren, he approached animation a bit differently. For him, it was not about following the rules particularly, but it was about exploring the art form itself. McLaren's work was made possible by the National Film Board of Canada, or the NFB, where he had the freedom to experiment without commercial pressures. This allowed him to develop his unique techniques and an artistic vision. The NFB's commitment to artistic exploration over profit made it an ideal place for McLaren to push the boundaries in animation and storytelling. He treated animation as a space where ideas, emotions, and rhythms could replace traditional narratives. And this willingness to experiment gave birth to some of his most influential works, like Neighbors, released in 1952, and Begone Doll Care, released in 1949, and Blankety Blank, released in 1955. Each of these films offers something unique, and we'll be covering all three today in this presentation. Neighbors, released in 1952, an Academy Award-winning film which starts with two neighbors peacefully sitting in front of their yards until they both notice a flower blooming between their houses. What begins as admiration quickly turns into possessiveness, and soon their friendly relationship devolves into a violent brawl. By the film's end, both neighbors have destroyed everything, including the flower they fought over. The themes of this film could be characterized as anti-war or the absurdity of conflict. Considering he made Neighbors during the post-World War II era, as the world dealt with the aftermath of a global conflict and tensions from the Korean War, the film reflects his deep belief in pacifism and critiques how small disagreements can escalate into all-out wars. McLaren's anti-war stance wasn't just a one-time theme. It was deeply rooted in his personal beliefs. Having grown up during times of political unrest, McLaren developed strong pacifist ideals early on. His experiences in communist China during the beginning of Mao's revolution gave him a renewed belief in the possibility of human cooperation and equality. However, upon returning to Canada and witnessing the outbreak of the Korean War, McLaren felt compelled to channel his frustrations into Neighbors, hoping to send a message of peace in a way that would be both simple and emotionally impactful. The neighbors fight over something as simple as a flower and becomes a metaphor for humanity's tendency to destroy what it loves out of greed and jealousy. The film also comments on the brutality of war's impact on innocent lives. Originally, violent scenes involving the neighbors harming their families were cut from the US version for being too disturbing, but McLaren later restored them during the Vietnam War. He felt that the restored scenes were necessary to highlight how war's victims are often those who have nothing to do with the conflict itself. And the technique used in this film is pixelation, a stop-motion technique that animates live actors. Gives the film a unique puppet-like feel. The actors' jerky and exaggerated movements emphasize how conflicts strip people of their humanity, turning them into mindless puppets controlled by their emotions. Instead of dialogue, repetitive sounds accompany the characters' movements, creating a strange rhythmical atmosphere. The fight almost feels like a violent dance, making the conflict seem both absurd and unsettling. And McLaren strips the setting down to two simple cardboard houses and a flower, making the story feel more universal and relatable. This could be any neighborhood, anywhere in the world, emphasizing the film's point that conflict can arise even from the smallest of things. Neighbors had a lasting impact on animation beyond just technical innovation. The use of pixelation as a storytelling tool influenced future filmmakers like Juan Franksmeyer and Brothers Quay, whose surreal stop-motion films also explore human nature and conflict in strange, dreamlike ways. Additionally, the mix of humor and horror in Neighbors, where playful moments suddenly turn violent, set the tone for future films that blend lighthearted visuals with darker themes, showing how animation can carry serious messages. Pixelation also allowed McLaren to control time and motion in unconventional ways. For example, he varied the speed at which actions are captured, creating bursts of frantic movements and eerie stillness. This manipulation adds emotional weight, drawing attention to moments of aggression and pause, emphasizing how quickly small conflicts can escalate. The next film we'll be covering is Begone All Care, released in 1949. It is a completely different experience from Neighbors. In this film, there is no plot or characters. Instead, McLaren offers a kaleidoscope of colors and shapes, which seem to dance and swirl in sync with music from Oscar Peterson, a pianist. McLaren's partnership with jazz legend Oscar Peterson, or the Peterson Trio, is one of the earliest and finest examples of cross-medium collaboration. Peterson's jazz score was not just background music, but it directly influenced the movement and flow of the images McLaren created. Each burst of color or swirling shape corresponds to a musical note or rhythm, making the film feel like a visual interpretation of the music itself. This process of synchronizing sound and movement in abstract animation was groundbreaking and opened the door for future visual artists to experiment with musical themes in films. The film's goal is to visualize the energy and spontaneity of jazz, making the theme of this film at its core a celebration of improvisation, both in art and life. McLaren abandons any need for structure, mirroring the chaotic freedom of jazz music. He seems to suggest that art doesn't always need a message or a story, and sometimes it's enough to just exist and to move and to explore. Watching Begone All Care feels like taking part in a playful conversation between visuals and sound. And since there are no characters or story, viewers are free to interpret the swirling colors and forms however they like. This freedom makes the film feel like an invitation to participate creatively. And the technique used in this film was revolutionary. McLaren painted and scratched directly onto 35mm stock, without using a camera at all. This gives the visuals an organic and spontaneous feel, as though the images are being created live in sync with the music, which was really interesting for the time. And the colors seem to explode and dissolve, creating a sensation that the music itself is painting the screen. The way McLaren fuses music and image blurs the lines between different art forms. He treats jazz and painting as two sides of the same coin, showing that sound can carry visual rhythms and images can evoke musical emotion. The next film we will be covering is Blickety Blank, released in 1955. It takes a more abstract approach, playing with the idea of impermanence. The film presents a series of flickering images that seem to appear and vanish in the blink of an eye, and watching it feels like trying to catch a firefly. You glimpse beauty for a moment, but only to lose it again. Blankety Blank is considered one of McLaren's most influential films. The concepts he explored, like the five phenomenon, which is the optical illusion that makes static images appear to move when shown in quick succession, were ideas that structural filmmakers began investigating more thoroughly in the 1960s and 70s, long after McLaren's work. The theme of this film is to explore how meaning and beauty are fleeting. It makes viewers think about how we can experience life, brief, beautiful moments that come and go often before we can fully grasp them. And McLaren's film suggests that it's okay to let go of control and embrace the moment, instead of trying to hold on to it. And the technique used was to scratch and draw directly onto black film stock, creating playful, flickering visuals. His use of negative space gives the film a dreamlike quality, where the absence of the image is just as important as what we see. This technique forces viewers to actively engage with the film, filling in the gaps with their imagination. The fragmented, unpredictable rhythm of the film mirrors the fleeting nature of thought and memory, blickety blank. And it went on to win the Palme d'Or for Best Short Film at the Cannes Film Festival, solidifying McLaren's reputation as a leading figure in experimental animation. Additionally, the film's sound design adds another layer of complexity to his experiment. Alongside an improvised instrumental soundtrack by Maurice Blackburn, McLaren scratched sounds directly onto the film's audio track. These percussive and synthetic sounds complement the intermittent visuals, giving the film a rhythmic and almost chaotic quality. The combination of sporadic sounds and flickering imagery makes the viewing experience feel unpredictable. McLaren's work with intermittent animation and fragmented imagery paved the way for modern experimental filmmakers and animators to explore non-continuous narratives and the role of subconscious in art. Techniques similar to those used in Blickety Blank, like the manipulation of black space and interrupted rhythm, can be seen in independent animations and video installations that reject linear storytelling. Filmmakers like Masaki Uasa with Mind Game and Sebastian Lodenbach with The Girl Without Hands continue to explore McLaren's ideas by allowing visual elements to flicker or disappear, resulting in the audience to piece together the meaning from the fragments. Overall, Norman McLaren's films are more than just visual experiments, but rather they are thoughtful reflections on conflict, creativity, and perception. Each film invites viewers to think about art in new ways. As Neighbors makes us confront how easily conflict can escalate and the absurdity of violence. Begone Dull Care shows us the beauty of freedom and artistic improvisation. And Blickety Blank reminds us of life's fleeting moments and the importance of embracing them. What makes his work timeless is that it breaks free from traditional storytelling. His films blur the boundaries between music, painting, cinema, proving that art can be both playful and profound. Today, his innovative techniques continue to inspire filmmakers and animators around the world, showing that sometimes art doesn't need rules, it just needs to dance.